Hello again, Wizards, to another episode of the Wizard Factory podcast, where you subscribe for weekly videos exploring deeper knowledge of the universe and yourself. Today's topic, we'll be looking at the dynamic of essentially art as a form of magic. And we are joined by Elijah Bose, who he's an artist himself. He's a student of the runes, Vedic astrology, human design, piano, fire spinning, and the mystery school of truth and nature. Elijah started painting in early 2017, compelled to find a new way to express the fire in his soul. Fascinated by symbols, he explores the relationship between what we know and what we truly know, with explosions of abstraction, intergalactic languages, and colorful patterns. His art quickly evolved from a mere hobby to a spiritual calling. Now, with pen, brush, and a devotion to beauty, he invites viewers to actively participate in the creation of meaning for the artwork he brings forth, evoking a remembrance of the magic within runic sigils, light language codes, and starfire letters. Through his art, he honors the ancestors and takes an active role in the forging of the future. Without regard for rules or convention, he will find a way to inspire you to look a little deeper and discover what's really happening in the universe inside you. It's time to awaken the Magi, and art is how we do it. What a beautifully written introduction, my man, and we're so happy to have you join us on this show. Welcome.
Thank you, brother. Good to be here.
Yeah. And so my name is Logan Hart. This is Brian Easterday. And so, Elijah, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you've been up to lately?
Right on. Well, I just finished up the largest art project that I have ever had the honor to work on. And it was actually for a major festival, cultural gathering, cultural experiment ritual, if you will, which is called Burning Man. And there's a lot of different things that happen at Burning Man. You know, a lot of distractions, a lot of energy put forth into pretty much every aspect of life there is multiplied and magnified. And what I had the honor of doing was to create 2 temple floors. So the camp that I went with is called Red Lightning, Blue Thunder. And one of the offerings of this camp was they built a few temples. And by temples, I mean giant metal structures with DJ equipment and 900-watt sound systems, and really just taking the energy poured forth to a new level. So I created these sacred floors for the fire temple along with a couple other artists. We worked together on this, and we created sacred floors for the fire temple and the water temple. And then, of course, what really drew me to the camp was the thunder element. You know, I heard that they were rebranding this year. In the past, they've always been Red Lightning, and this was the first year that they brought in Blue Thunder. And this was also my first year with them. And it turns out that Red Lightning, Blue Thunder is part of an ancient Celtic Druidic prophecy, too, that would come about in the time of, the earth being in great peril. And I don't know too much about all that, but I do know that it felt strongly in alignment. And one of the things that I was able to do was partake in the creation of this Thunder Temple, which was a geometric 55-foot tall structure made out of metal with a 9-pointed star as the basis geometric shape that it was constructed off of. So one of the things that happened with this structure was there was a group about to perform on there called Lucent Dossier. And one of the builders who had been working on building this came up to me and said, "Hey man, this group's about to perform in like 2 hours. And we just put together this DJ booth. Can you come paint it real fast?" And I was like, okay, sure. I got 2 hours. Let's see what comes through. So I went up and I grabbed some paint and I got some spray paint and I started doing my thing. And then I painted the entire thing. Took me out a bit on some of the artistic vision and covered up some of my work. And then we collaborated on pieces of it. And then right at the end, then and this happens a lot with my artwork. It was like, and this is something that I want to go into today with you guys, is this process of like enchanting it. And it's like the pieces for me, they come through, they reveal themselves as I work on them. And then at the end, then the intention gets put in. Most of the time I don't start with an actual intention. It's just creation, just, just flowing through. And I'm just like surrendered and trusting and just going with it. And then at the end, then something happens and it all makes sense and I see the whole piece. And so at the very end of this one, 5 runes came through right in the middle. And they were Birch Tanaj, Thurisaj, Elhaj, Tiwaj, and Rido. And so I looked at that and I saw, and I, because of my relationship with the runes and how I work with them and have studied them, I immediately saw that as the birth of a thunder shaman and victory through right action and ritual. Wow. And right after that, then we had this amazing intuitive singer get on stage and take the stage and start channeling in some really powerful healing frequency of music. And then these performers just came out of nowhere and had a whole circus act, which they did on the stage, which had a very deep, powerful message about, waking up and becoming the author of your life and, getting your head out of the box of what most people are put into. And they had this great segment where all these people had TVs on their heads and got up and were just like, and it was, sound bites from the television playing and they were just like, and it was really powerful and it was really amazing to see such an immediate result of creating this, this portal, this Stargate, this work of magic, this work of art that just flowed through. And then immediately to see it be activated and collaborated upon. So that's really one of the big things that I'm excited to talk about is this opportunity for, intentionally creating objects in reality, which create reality fields around them, which can activate certain DNA and epigenetics and different, perceptions of reality within every person who comes into contact with it and can really shift reality. And if we have enough people doing this around the planet, then we can shift things pretty rapidly through the creation of art.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really profound, and my brain is just firing on so many different ways of as you were going through your story there of just different aspects that we could just dive right down into the rabbit hole, essentially, because the law of correspondence is very strong with the artistic medium, and this idea of sort of getting out of your own way to allow that art to come through you, and not really having a set vision or end goal, rather than it's more of a state of doing through being. Almost like I was imagining a potter who starts with just a lump of clay. It doesn't have any necessary form. You're doing the thing to do the thing, and it's more of the act of doing through that achieves that end result. And as you're allowing those energies to flow and just tapping into the intuition, it begins to literally take shape and form in front of you. And then only when you're finished, you realize what you were doing all along. I mean, that's really beautiful. And also one other thing I wanted to throw in here is the absolute importance when it comes to being a spiritual being, awakened being with the correct eyes to see as we navigate through this life, is really putting yourself in a state of viewing everything as allegorical. Anything can be symbolic. You could pull a lifetime's worth of lessons from any one thing just by observing the wind move through the trees, or literally art is everywhere. And so what you're speaking of there, that really lit me up, in context of thinking of just you can bring so much meaning out of the simplest actions or the simplest objects or something as just a stage or a little platform and some paints or whatever, and you created such a powerful, magical, conduit there. So
yeah, it's really fascinating to look at the word art. And, we think of it as a thing right now, like a painting that hangs on the wall, right? But think about it in terms of the origin of the word art, like thou art. It's to be, it's to be. And the act of creating art it's something that is intrinsically valuable. It's not valuable for an end in itself. Painting would make a pretty shitty house. You can't drive it anywhere. You can't eat it, but it exists just to exist. And there's an aspect of that is really inherent in all nature, is that it exists just to exist. A tree just trees. It's just a tree. It's a tree. And art is art. And yeah, we're all artists on some level. It's just how much of that we choose to rise up and claim, and how much of that we choose to embody, and at what level we decide to play on and create at.
Yeah, you could even say everything is both the art and the artist as well, because remember, we're in that perpetual feedback loop of subject and object, where, I could pick up my guitar and start playing it, but then as soon as I play that first note, the guitar is playing me back because it's moving me emotionally, and then it's inspiring me on which note that I want to play next. And it's this relational, experience. And that's what art ultimately means for me, as far as being identified as an artist versus, some people who don't so much think of themselves as that, but yet actually are. Because art and magic almost are very interchangeable in a lot of ways. And the timing of this episode is really, synchronistic, because just a couple weeks back, we actually did an episode just on introducing the true meaning of magic and how you're a creator, whether you realize it or not. And so you have that responsibility to really own your spindle and use it responsibly and with wisdom, essentially. So yeah, Brian, do you have anything you want to chime in on there?
Yeah, I mean, definitely I had a lot going on as Jonathan was going through that story. So I think the first thing that I want to look at is the act of creating a sacred space itself. That's the beginning of the magical act. I mean, just talking about going through the effort of creating this 9-pointed, 55-foot dome, and then you're adding all this electrical charge in here too. So you're bringing in, modern, magical practice, because that's one thing you have to recognize, that, our ancestors didn't have access to just the amount of charge that is around it, that we're using on these simple devices. All of these are things that are very powerful, and that, especially when you're incorporating them into a sacred space with intention of setting the music, or perform, having, the random performers come up, all of that is charge that can be harnessed and amplified, and that has a very powerful effect on the subconscious and the unconscious mind. And this is why our ancestors spent so much time, in social circles and gatherings, and especially for important events, that there were these mass rituals that would take place, and, because they're very effective. Yes, you can go tap into these and do this on your own, but what you can generate in a crowd of people that all have an intention is an extremely powerful act. And there's not really anything you can't achieve when you can tap into that kind of power. So, a very interesting story there. I'm sure this is a very wonderful thing to be able to experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's such a fascinating thing to explore, is that art has been around as long as humanity has had consciousness, right? You think back to the cave paintings in France with, putting the hands up and the smoke and all that. And they're just, coming into realization that we have bodies and that we leave a mark on this world, and leaving that. And I imagine them coming back there year after year and adding to it, and learning to draw the animals and leaving, encoded messages for those that come behind. And that took an incredible amount of effort for those, Paleolithic ancestral lines way back in the day, to leave those what we would see now as such simple messages. And then we have you know, Burning Man is a great example of this, where it's a week-long event, and people build massive structures that 1,000 years ago would have been nicer than most castles, you know, nicer than what 95% of people lived in. And then they fucking burn it. They burn it at the end.
Yeah.
It's like, that's the level of abundance of energy that we're living in right now, is we got so much that we can build these things and then just set them on fire. And it's like, you know, we can have a conversation about whether or not that's the wisest thing to do, but it's not really the conversation that matters. The conversation that matters is that the energy is there. Like, what are we going to do with it? You know, as individuals, as collectives, with us three right here, right now. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It also reminded me of how, like, would they have been so keen or quick to burn such a creation as that if they didn't have what we have now of being able to digitally document those creations? It's like, well, we got pictures and videos of it, so now it's immortalized, so now we can just burn the actual thing and always reference back to it. And you know, that's almost a kind of an artistic act in and of itself, which, you know, I find is really interesting. That, like you said yourself, art has always been around since the beginning of time. What has evolved and changed is our tools. And so just as tools can, you know, build something that has a practical purpose, like you said, a house or something like that, our tools is what allows us to make better art as well. You could take, you know, Jimi Hendrix and give him some like guitar with like all the strings but one are broken off, and you know, it's out of tune and all this kind of stuff, and he's not really able to be Jimi Hendrix because his tool is so limiting that he can't even produce the sounds that, you know, that you would expect. And you know, and I think about people like Steve Vai, or, you know, I'm a guitar nerd, so I think about the cutting edge of what that instrument can do, you know, in that world, and how, you know, just sorry, it just got a call. So you know, it's always evolving what new achievements that we can pull through just using the material. And you know, that's really speaking to, you have to be abundant in the materials and be able to have access to better tools and the ability to create or acquire those tools as well, right? You know, if I want to build a recording studio, I can't just take a scrap of, you know, a pile of lumber and a hammer and build a recording studio. Like it's a lot, you know, the economy is more evolved, I guess you could say. So I have to do different things to actually acquire that equipment. But then once I have that, there's so much, you know, we could record something on our phone that it would have took like a professional studio to record like a Beatles album or something. We can do that with an iPhone now. Or, you know, people literally are filming movies with iPhones now. I mean, that's insane, you know?
We're so empowered. And anything you want or need, you know, especially here in North America, anything you want or need is like, boom, Amazon delivers it same day. And it's like and it's the decision to invest in the equipment, you know, not always knowing where it's going to go or what it's going to do or whatever. Like, I love buying art supplies. I love it. That's where all my money goes. It's just like, send me some more art supplies or like some more creation things. And then I don't always have an intention or an idea for it when I get it, but then after time it reveals itself and I'm like, oh, that's why I got that. Right on. That's cool. And so yeah, it's really fascinating what you said about the tools too, because there's that importance of like having good tools available. And yet some of the most powerful creators do it regardless of circumstances, regardless of not having, you know, everything at their disposal. And it's like you can learn it, you know, even at a disadvantage. And you can, it comes down to really choosing to trust your soul and choosing to follow that right path and do the ritual and do the disciplined action to continue to practice. And sure, it might be easier if you have the right tools, but I've seen people doing with a simple marker just magic that is far beyond, you know, what someone who's well funded and a freaking you know, gone to our beautiful art school and an atelier and studied for years and trained in all the classic ways, and they're just cranking out the same shit as everyone else. And then someone with like a simple marker and cardboard comes along and does some, whoa, what did you just do? Or like graffiti artists, you know, they don't even have canvases. They just go out into the world as their canvas, and then they create these compelling narratives with just a simple can of spray paint. And like, there's such a beauty too in being able to do a lot with a little, especially in an age when a lot of people are doing a little with a lot.
Right.
Yeah. It's almost kind of that process of aging of like, you know, you start as small and helpless, and then you grow into an adult, and then as you get older, you start shrinking and becoming more helpless again. You kind of revert to, it's just like that growing, and then you're cutting away, almost like the way the runes progress as well. It's like that building of energy and then cutting it back away as a refinement process as well. So I mean, yeah, like the tools are important, but they aren't everything. They're two separate dynamics, your skill and your soul expression and all that kind of thing, and then the tools that empower and enable you to fully get those things out as well. And another thing that I think is so absolutely important about everyone shifting their mindset to kind of start viewing themselves as an artist, as a creator, is because art is it takes a plethora of forms. So it doesn't have to be something conventional like a painting or a song. It could be like you cooking a simple meal, or dance, parkour. Like there's just literally so many ways you could look at it. But ultimately there's several things that are very universal when it comes to them all. And one of them I think is vitally important in this day and age, when we need that sort of revival of the spiritual warrior, is that in order to create something as art and put it out there, you have to face your fears and you have to face yourself. There's no way around that, because it's taking a piece of your soul and pulling it out of you, and then putting it out in front, and for any and everyone to spit on it or like praise it or whatever. Like it's all out there. You're just bearing your soul to the whole world. That's terrifying.
Yeah. And it's the daily discipline and decision to continue doing that, even though at first it doesn't manifest. Like at first, you're not going to be great at expressing your soul. I'm sorry, you're not. But when we live in a world ruled by the intellect and by boxes that everyone's been conditioned to believe that they have to fit into, then when you start pulling your soul out, it's going to get muddied and tarnished. And then you'll get a bit of it every once in a while that'll come through as you intended. But you got to practice and develop the techniques to actually be able to bring your soul forth in a way that you finally look at it and you're like, okay, yeah, that actually is what I wanted to do.
Right. And those little tidbits, though few and far between, that's actually what keeps you going. It's like just all this sucking, and then all of a sudden you get one thing and you're like, well, that was pretty good. And then you want more, and then you go back at it. And, it's kind of cheesy, but at the same time, that's what makes it awesome. Is there's a line from Adventure Time where he says, sucking at something is the first step to being kind of good at something. And so, like, literally every master, the first time Leonardo da Vinci painted something, it was utter shit. You know what I'm saying? So, like, everyone has to start from the bottom. And that's kind of beautiful and humbling in a way too, because we're all just human beings.
Yeah. So that really has me thinking of how art can be used as in a sense like a shamanic initiation for the individual, so you raise your consciousness, but then taking this back to the larger scale here, and looking at us as a collective. You mentioned, Jonathan, that art's been around since the beginning. And I think that was probably a very important step in our development, because if you think to be able to create art, you have to tap into the creativity. You're tapping into the imagination, and that's really where we first start being able to become creators. That's where there's so much power being able to tap into this. And, I think this is obviously one of the reasons why this is so suppressed, especially in our Western society. They want to lock everybody over to, staying in logic, staying in the left brain and organized, and not learning to let go and step into that, just trusting the process and then seeing, what happens.
Unless it's sanctioned. Creativity is allowed forth in sanctioned bursts to give the creatives an outlet, and to, some of them. I used to work in marketing and advertising, and I made ridiculous money. Like, I was great at it because it was wizardry, it was persuasion, it was changing worldviews and implanting perceptions. And then there's a lot of dark magic stuff that goes on there that, they wouldn't call it dark magic, and they might not even know it's dark magic, but it is just, it's manipulation, and it's keeping people on a feedback loop, buying the same shit, trying the same solutions, and not really giving them the oomph. And then there's people that are out there giving the oomph, giving the real for free. They're not charging $5,000 for a weekend to get it. And so it is really, there is a lot of creativity that is then hijacked and, directed through this currency, through the control of the currency, into certain sanctioned outlets.
Yeah, that is true. And I think another thing that it is in regards to creation, people they don't want to work to develop their craft. It's like this magic pill thing that, we did an episode just on that, of you want it now. And I used to teach guitar for many years, and that's the thing that you see the most, is people like the idea of being a rock star and, looking cool with their flame guitar, and all the bitches will love me. And then they're like, wait a minute, you mean I have to sit for 4 hours in my room playing the same 3 chords over and over until I don't fuck it up? Like, that's not cool. Yeah, exactly. Like, they don't want to put in the work for it. And really what it comes down to is they don't want to earn it. It's that same give me, like, Jesus savior complex of they don't want to earn it. Just like, well, I said the thing, so now I get the prize, right? Like, I did the little thing that you said, and now I get the prize. Just give me.
And the marketers play to that so hard. I just saw an ad yesterday on Instagram that was like, learn piano in 3 weeks, and I was like, no. No. You might learn some chords, you might learn a few scales if you really devote yourself for 3 weeks, but everyone wants to buy the quick fix, the diet pill, and then
right.
And then when the real work presents itself,
it's like
those who choose to do it reap the results.
It's like in the Matrix, where he clicks the button and downloads the program, and then he's like, oh no, kung fu, like, just like that, like, and who knows, maybe we'll actually have something like that, where you just you buy a download, a little zip file, and then you can play like Jimi Hendrix again.
Yeah, I'll pass on that. That sounds like some really have to have some shit,
transhumanist shit.
Yeah,
exactly.
The funny thing is, too, I see this actually a lot in the spiritual community. And by spiritual, I mean like New Age spiritual, and a lot of the people here in Southern California where I live, where they talk about like my one friend comes to mind, and it's just like, she said at one point, I don't want to put in the work to learn piano, because I know one day my consciousness will be at a level that it'll just unlock and I'll be able to play. And I was just like, I didn't challenge her on it because I didn't really care to have that conversation, but it was like, no, like, no, you're not going to get there. You're not going to build a pyramid. You're not just going to sit and suddenly have a pyramid appear overnight one day without putting down the blocks and building it. And if anything does appear, it'll be a hologram of a pyramid, and it'll be a digital projection and not the real thing, and it could disappear as soon as the power goes out. And this is the world that we're being conditioned to live in and believe in and think about right now, is everything's all digital. It's like, this is one of the interesting things around, right? It's a simulation. This drives me fucking nuts. Just a quick tangent. When people say, oh, it's a simulation, A simulation of what? Like, if this is simulating something, then does that mean that there's another reality somewhere that this is actually just a simulation of? Like, it's such a like nonsensical, useless statement to make that this is a simulation, because it's like simulating what? Like, what does that mean?
Right. If everything's a copy of a copy, then something has to be the original somewhere.
So why not this? Why not right here, right now?
Where's the real? The really real, you know?
What if this was reality? Whoa. Trippy, man.
Crazy.
That's far out.
Yeah. Well, that whole New Age mindset, as we talk a lot on this platform, is a result of right brain imbalance, which the feminine is the right brain, and that's not into anything anti-female or anti-feminine. It's an imbalance. It's one without the other, and when you have that, you're missing the masculine of work. Masculine is action oriented, so doing, working at something, and struggle as well. I mean, you can see this almost like in the playing out in the political paradigm. The left want everything handed to them. The right is all about hard work. The right represents that masculine, and I'm not saying that they're both imbalanced in different ways, but that's the thing is people talk about world peace and everything just being perfect, and it's like, no, you realize if that happened, there would be nothing left to do. The consciousness is always expanding. It's ad infinitum. The work is never done. And it's people wanting to just feel like, oh, we did it, yay, now we can all go home. And it's like, no, it's perpetual.
Yeah. And to tie it into another framework too, it comes back to, in one sense, the war, the Aesir and the Vanir, the celestial and the terrestrial, the timeless and the time-bound. And we can take this and apply it to different aspects of reality, whereby the Black Lodges, the ones behind the scenes can control everything, actually know how things work. They know how karma works. They know how time works. They know how discipline works. They work with Saturn. But there's this story fed to the masses, which pits the son of God, right? The soul, the celestial self, versus Satan, Saturn. Maybe it's, somewhat linguistically connected for a reason, and this is all kind of pitted against that, and it's this idea that you can get things without work if you just believe, if you just have faith. Your deeds, your actions don't matter. It just matters what you say you believe or what you think you believe. And so it's really interesting to look at it from that astrological perspective too, of the sun, the soul, and then Saturn. And so many people have a resistance to Saturn, or they think Saturn is this base where the reptilians landed and then came to the moon. And it's like,
right. Well, and that ties in perfectly with what I was saying. Is Saturn is the opposer. He puts his thumb on you, and that pressure is what actually, it's like the Nauthies. That's what's actually causing you to, okay, like this is a difficult situation. I'm going to actually have to get stronger to overcome the circumstances, and then you come out the other side as a more evolved being. I mean, that's beautiful. And why would you ever want to remove that out of, as if you even could, but even why would you want to? That's what literally is, it's the engine of evolution.
Yeah.
Well, and what's interesting about, in context of Saturn here is that moving into the Aquarian age, Aquarius is obviously the higher expression of Saturn. Yeah. So if individuals are wanting to really tap into the energy that we're all moving into more and more, they're going to have to come to terms with that Saturn energy. And you're first going to have to work through it with, through that Capricorn expression of Saturn, where you're being really disciplined and you're learning how to do that. And then once you get through that, you get the higher lesson of Saturn, because, Saturn, it's a heavy, it's a slow moving planet. So you have that pressure, and you're going to experience it for a long time because you have to earn it. But then when you get that, you're going to retain it as well.
Yeah.
So definitely a very, Saturn happens to be my Ishta-Devata, so it's one, I like to work with it a lot,
Beautiful.
And it, it's definitely a planet that many people have a very negative view on. Like I said, there's the whole idea, the Saturn moon matrix, and like I said, it's their reptilian
No,
beliefs and all that. It's a
ties right
fear-based
in.
mentality that keeps people away from that lesson that is actually there if they dive into that energy and work with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it ties right into what, kind of how I first started getting into waking up, I guess, waking up to the conspiracy side of things. That first red pill is, Illuminati and, the Federal Reserve and Saturn is the black robes and the judges and the police and all this kind of stuff. And there's a lot of truth to that, but then it has you thinking that the occult is evil and that Saturn is a bad guy, and it's coming from a very like Luciferian Christian point of view as well. And I'm glad that I didn't stay stuck in that, because that's kind of one of those, it's just like the first layer, and so many people just kind of get there and they stop and they're like, this is just how it is, and they just keep researching more and more about how they're putting devil frequencies in the music, and it's just this whole fear thing.
They just keep adding on to the prison walls, thinking that they're free.
If Saturn represents karma, then like Saturn, then karma's only a bitch if you are. That's something that I like to say, because it's just a mirror in front of your face. It's literally like Mother Hella. I mean, it's that same kind of thing of just, it's showing you your own self for better or worse. And if you don't like what you see, then fix it.
Yeah.
Heal, grow, get better. You have the power. That's why sovereignty is always the prime, foundation with our teachings.
Kali would be another archetype as well as Hela. They're both of them are associated with Saturn. Another very, to look at it through the Vedic tradition, that's another very interesting energy to embrace. And obviously she's one that, her and both Hela can very much terrify people. If they, appear to them, they have very intense, especially Kali has a very intense energy, but it's that energy of destruction, of being able to like rip everything that you aren't away.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is if you are living your life in alignment with cosmic law, you have nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
Right? So I think ultimately the reason that these things are seen as fearsome imagery is because at a subconscious level, people know how far deviated from cosmic law we actually are, because that is further way deep down in the psyche. So it's the cerebral cortex that's all jammed up with mind control and programming, but your heart and your soul aren't confused. They know exactly what's going on, and they know how detached and separated we are from truth. So, and it's the same thing, I think, is why the Joker is such a very popular and powerful, and you keep seeing these movies where the Joker is this, it, and all these different depictions of the Joker from Batman, is people are afraid of their own playfulness, that childlike feminine energy of to be silly and be kind of out there, There's so much you can learn about the collective psyche from just what is appearing in pop culture and movies and other media like that.
Absolutely, it's our modern mythology. If you look at things like this, mythology is obviously an expression of the the collective subconscious and unconscious mind.
Wouldn't that be kind of like Loki? Really, like the Joker and Loki could be kind of compared, and
even sounds
trickster. And once again, if it scares you, then maybe you should ask, why are you afraid of that apophatic learning? Why do you keep touching the fire and thinking you're going to get something different?
Yeah, dude. I was out camping in Joshua Tree last year for one of the full moons, and I just drove my van out, parked it, set up, and had a fire going, and then I heard a noise, and I looked around and I didn't see anything, and then I heard another noise, and I was looking around, and I felt the fear coming up inside, and I grabbed my knife in my pocket and was holding it, and I'm just ready, and then I'm just okay, and I hear another noise, and I'm like, what is there? Is there some animal right there? Is that a person? this little tiny mouse with a long ass tail comes running out and sits there, looks up at me. And I was like, the first thought that came to my head was, oh, hi, Loki. And I said that to him. I was just like, oh, hey, Loki. And it's just like, and he just like nodded at me and then just like scampered off. And he hung around all night and I gave him some food and like he hung out after that. But he was just there to, you know, initiate me into like this remembrance of like, you don't have to be afraid, because like, yeah, you just don't have to ever be afraid. And even if when you feel fear, you can face that fear and move through it. And like on a bigger scale, even I heard a story from one of my mentors, a very powerful man who trained a lot of guys in hand-to-hand combat, and went through a beautiful course with him and on combat and meditation and all sorts of powerful techniques for mastering reality. And he told a tale of a friend of his who went on a vision quest. And this guy went up and took water and no food, went to the top of the mountain, drew a circle, and said, I'm not leaving this circle for 3 days. Spirit, teach me what I need to learn. And he sat down in the circle. And at one point when he was in the circle, a bear, like a big brown bear, not a little black bear, but a big brown bear, walked up to the edge of his circle, stared at him. He stared back. The bear nodded at him and lumbered off. And like that dude faced Loki on a level that's like, whoa. Like to be able to sit in a circle and trust the integrity of that spell and trust in the process that you're going through enough that a fucking bear could swipe your head off with one little swipe, walks up, and you're just like, hi, brother. That's warrior, man. That's fucking warriorship. Hats off to that gentleman, wherever he is, whoever he is.
Well, and I think something interesting to look at, with, you know, Loki's definitely one of my favorite archetypes to work with. You know, he used to be so much fun, but he gets such a bad rap. But one of the things that, you know, we can see in the mythology about Loki is that even though, you know, he himself may get into some experiences where he's you know, got himself into some shit, you know, in short. But through that, he becomes, you know, he's very clever. And I think it's very interesting to look at, you know, being clever and mischievous and playful and that creativity and how closely those are actually tied together. You know, because when, you know, if he gets himself in a situation, he has to come up with a very creative, very clever way to get out of that situation. So that's a very interesting tool and part of ourselves that we can learn to tap into more, and that is what can really give us that confidence to, when there is that pressure from Saturn, there is that apophatic process going on, we can figure out how to navigate that, and, you know, even learning to stay lighthearted when we do that, you know, to mix in that humor. You know, I think, you know, Loki has a lot to teach us if people will just kind of look beyond the mask.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love it. So, Elijah, where did you start when it came to your art? Was it like the painting, the letters? What really kind of was the first thing that you kind of sunk your teeth into there?
Right. So when I was young, I did a lot of music and musical theater and acting, and I was in a bunch of plays and a bunch of different stuff. And then in high school, kind of drifted away from that, and then university left it entirely, went into drinking and smoking and studied philosophy and thought I had everything figured out. I learned a lot of useful techniques and a lot of theories and frameworks. And then after I graduated, then I was like, I'm going to be sovereign and independent. And I read like the 4-Hour Work Week and just went into business full on and bought a one-way ticket to Peru, went and did ayahuasca in the jungle with a shaman, started writing sales copy online. Started out for $5. I would do like a sales page for someone. And then within a year, that was up to like 500. Year after that, it was like 5,000. And then, so I was doing great, you know, 24-year-old kid making $250 an hour with a list of clients that included some of the top names in online marketing. And I was living in a beach house. I had a Jeep Wrangler roof rack Rubicon. Just loved that vehicle. And yeah, great relationship. And then everything just started to like, the reality just started to like crack at the seams a little bit. And I was aware there was something deeper and more. And that, you know, we lived right by the Self-Realization Fellowship, which is where Yogananda set up his first yoga practice in America. We lived right by it. Beautiful thing that overlooks the ocean. And then I started doing this emotional intelligence training program in Los Angeles. And I went to this one event that we had, which was a ropes course. And at this ropes course, there we were all doing, you know, team building exercises and whatnot. And this one guy, I was actually up on one of the ropes up high, and then suddenly there was this big commotion down below, and they said, "Come down now." And I jumped down, and they lowered me down, and then took the thing off, took the harness off, and I go over, and one of our team members, we had 50 team members or whatever. One of our team members had collapsed on the ground. I was having a heart attack. And I was standing, we all circled up, and I was standing about 10 feet away from his head, maybe less, maybe 6 or 7 feet. I was right there, though. I could see his eyes. And I could see like the energy and the emotion of what was going through him. And there was 3 people around doing CPR on him. And then we all joined hands in the circle. And then I saw his face go blank and the life left. And I remember looking at his face and being like, oh, wow, I just saw someone die. That's crazy. It's a new experience for this lifetime. And then someone in our group started oming. Just om. And everyone else joined in. And within a few minutes, there was, 50 of us around this guy just oming. And it just brought so much peace to the entire environment. Everyone just tuned into this different frequency instead of this fear and panic that we'd all been in around, oh shit, this guy's fucking dying. It was like and then the CPR people kept going. And then suddenly there was just, and he gasped and sucked in air, and I just saw his eyes open again and stare up, and they just stared right past me. They were just pinned. And for 30 seconds, he just like inhaled prana deeply into his body, just filling himself back up with life. And then suddenly his consciousness returned. He was just like, whoa, where am I? And tried to sit up, and they like, lie down, let's stay down, stay down. And then the ambulance came, took him away. And that night I went home and I painted a painting. I'd never painted before. Except when I was a kid, like doing some fucking birds in watercolor. But I painted a painting. I put on a track playing Om over and over again. And I was home alone that night in this beautiful beach house. And I just painted this painting, and I just kept going, and it was just circle. It was a mandala, and it just went from red to yellow to orange or red to orange to yellow to green to pink to indigo to violet to black and white to gold to a white thing in the middle with a gold Om on it. And I just knew when I finished that it was called There's No Place Like Om, and that it was a gift for him. And so I gave it to him. And after that, everything else just sort of lost interest for me. I also went to Burning Man for the first time and saw a bunch of, massive scale art installations and people creating just for the sake of creation. And I was like, there's something to this. And the money started to lose interest for me. We almost got evicted from the house because I was like, I quit my job, stopped paying rent, stopped ding on clients. I was just like, I don't want anything to do with any of that. Like, get me the fuck out of here. I need something real. And I bought a van, moved into the van, and then I got pens and calligraphy paper, and I just started going. And I was just like, you know what? This is what I got to do right now. And I went from having weeks and months where I was making $15,000, $20,000 to scraping together money to buy fruit so that I could keep going. And like just little acts of magic kept me going along the way. And And it was an intense period of calcination where everything just had to burn up inside me. And around this time I discovered Zethicus and Thunder Wizard and other guys, and I just started Mark Passio, and I started really diving into those teachings too, as I was also simultaneously exploring my artistic side, and just really coming into an alignment deeper with like who my soul came here to be, and not the version of myself that I had created. And yeah, it took a long time, like, to find my voice as an artist and to figure out what exactly I was doing. I was just making marks at first and playing with colors and symbols, and then it happened pretty fast, though. It really, relatively speaking, it was easier than I expected it would be, or than I would have expected it would be, as, an objective observer. Sometimes we look at these things and we're like, oh, I would want to do that, but there's all this discipline and work, and it's going to take years and whatnot. It's like, you know what? Yes, and it can happen faster than you would think. If it's in alignment with what your soul came here to do, then the universe will provide you with the next steps. It will provide you with the materials and the tools and the resources and the inspiration and everything you need, and it'll feel natural. And it's like the biggest resistance will come from inside your own head, for sure.
Right.
So that was a very long-winded answer to your question, but I felt it was necessary
such a
too.
powerful story, and thank you for sharing that. That was really, really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it has me thinking of, I just kind of bringing myself into the thought of being in that situation, and I find it very interesting that an event like that was so life-changing for you, and the gabo that took place there, like the man, had to go through the experience of, pretty much dying. But that created such a psychological and emotional charge that it unlocked something within you that you had never done before. And it was something that just literally changed your path entirely. And as a way of honoring that back, that first piece of art, that first piece of creation, you knew was to give back to him for that gift of that experience. I mean, that's a really beautiful thing there, man.
Yeah. And it's like, this is something that all artists know, is that at least all artists who are truly on the spiritual artist path, is those synchronicities and those alignments just happen like daily. Now it's like a day without a major synchronicity for me, I'm like, oh, that was weird. But it's just, it's this process of beautiful unfolding and things coming together and witnessing the weaving of the web of weird with these powerful energies, and, surrendering myself to the sade of it, kind of. It is a sade state to go into creation. And
absolutely.
Yeah, I have like my painting of a lion, and I like brought that through in one night. And I had never painted an animal before, and I was just like, I need to paint a lion. And it's still, to this day, his name's Jupiter, because my Jupiter is in Leo. And
okay, I got you.
Yeah,
I was going to ask you astrologically, because I could definitely feel a lot of like Leo energy in you for sure. So, I was curious as another astrologer as well. So
yeah, come here, little Leo.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, in my life, the whole arc of the story that I'm been living through my whole life, music especially, has really just been that one constant going through all of it. That has been my foundation in so many ways, because it's like, something that gives so much value to me, but then the fact that I'm able to channel that same intelligence of the universe through and recreate and add to it. The universe itself means one song, and so putting a song out into the universe and just adding notes that harmonize with the universal song that's being sung, I can't even begin to describe what a gift that feels like to me. Is that, I didn't ask, well, not to my knowledge, maybe I did before I incarnated, but I didn't ask for my talents and my gifts and everything. But I damn sure don't intend to spend a moment of time wasting them or not giving them back, because those are the things that's for everyone. Like I could sit in my room and play the guitar by myself and no one hears it, and I appreciate it, but I could play that same song in front of an arena of 100,000 people, and then that same song just touched all those people and shifted their consciousness, and I mean it's literally such powerful magic,
Yeah. And this is where, the prospect and the aspect of know thyself comes in so deeply. That is, the first fucking rule, and the most important thing is, that's what I redirect people back to all the times, is when they ask me questions about stuff. It's like, know thyself. And it's knowing thyself in terms of what is subjective and what is objective. So I have like my life really narrowed down to a few things, and I know myself on such a deep level right now that I'm pretty much unfuckwithable when it comes to like what I'm here to do and create and who I'm here to be. It's like, yeah, I know me. So if it's in alignment, it's in alignment. If it's not, it's not. And I have it nailed down to my mission statement, which is I free artists. And that's it. That's my clarity on that. And it's just, my friend was just expressing to me yesterday that that's just in my field. She said, just from the way that you express yourself and the freedom and the ease with which you create things in reality, it gives other people a permission slip to do the same. You don't even have to do anything. Just show up and be you. And that's the beautiful thing about knowing myself is I know that, so I don't actually have to do shit. I just show up and the universe does the shit through me, and I'm like, cool, I just did that. That's awesome. Like painting the stage at the thing. I looked at it afterwards and I was talking to one of the guys, and he said, I was like, yeah, it's such a beautiful thing that I just made. And he goes, and he said something around like, yeah, it's amazing when the universe works through us to create these things. And I'm like, yeah, of course it's all like this universal energy flowing through to do it. And I was just there as the witness of it. And at the same time, I just fucking made that shit. And it's like being able to acknowledge both levels of like, the detached observer witness consciousness, and then also the desire of the ego, and acknowledging that, the desire of the child to say like, yeah, I did that. I made that. I'm proud of my work. I'm happy with what I did. And it's like neither is right or wrong. It's just they're both two aspects of the same self.
They're both simultaneously true. And thank you for saying that, because that's one of those kind of things that people get a little bit polarized on is they're so like they bought into that new age, like total egolessness, and just the universe just moves through me and it had nothing to do with you. Well, that's not true. Like,
says the ego.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, is when you're creating, good art requires both hemispheres of the brain. The right is that creative channeling, pulling things through you as a medium, and that unexpected, unrestrained, just explosion. But the left brain is just as much a part of it, and it's pulling from your life experiences. And every time you've studied music theory or some new technique to get a certain sound, or like that's all part of it too, and your personality comes through. And oh, hi kitty.
I just wanted to say on the topic of Leo, this is King Arthur right here.
Show tonight.
Yeah, this guy just came to me a couple months ago, and
yeah, I've been seeing that on Facebook, man. He was just a little floof when you first got him.
Dude, so grateful, man. He saved my life. He's a wonderful familiar and ally, and
yeah. But anyway, just to tie that together, it's definitely both. It's the all coming through you, and it's you coming through the all. It's both simultaneously. It's like that Gabo again. Just
exactly. And it just comes back to knowing, once again, to bring it back to know thyself and know what the universe wants to express through you. So like that's my personal mission statement, is I free artists. And my soul's desire, I also have my soul's desire and my soul's purpose clarified to extreme simplicity like that too. So my soul's desire is to create objects of great beauty. My soul's purpose is to communicate deep truths about the universe. Now those things can align, and they do align often, and the soul's purpose is what I receive rewards for, and the soul's desire is what I receive joy for. And so when I'm doing, beautiful calligraphy with cosmic messages embedded in it, it's aligning everything together and funneling my essence into that. And to bring it back to Brian's point about astrology earlier, my Dharma Devata is Venus.
Mine as well.
Hey!
Mine as well, yes.
And my Palana Devata is Jupiter.
Okay.
And I have Jupiter and Venus conjunct together in Leo in the 5th house.
All right, okay.
So all this stuff that I have worked on myself to elaborate and to elucidate so clearly so that I can show up as who I am is all astrologically verified too. And that was a major part of me coming to realize it. And for anyone who's watching who doesn't understand, Venus is, planet of love, sex, and chocolate. And she's the goddess, and she's just wonderful, nurturing princess, right? And she's also about art and creativity and things like that. And then Jupiter is Thor. Jupiter is an empowering, expansive guru teacher. And Jupiter and Venus are the two biggest teachers of humanity. Jupiter teaches us to expand and to become these gurus. And then Venus teaches us to enjoy life while we're at it. And so with the two of them together in the 5th house, which is the house of creativity, the house of the arts, Leo, it makes total sense that I'm painting fucking lions.
Right.
With mystical, magical messages hidden.
Yeah, I love astrology so much. So it's so much fun there too. And I think this is an interesting thing is that a really powerful lesson I just learned recently from working with Freya, who's I work with as my representation of Venus was, that Venus on the high, yes, it represents pleasure and everything, but on the higher side, it represents devotion. And I was asking myself this one day, and I was like, devotion to what? And I just heard this very simple answer. It was like, to being. Like, that is art.
To art.
You're just that, like, art is creation. That's what the universe is doing. It's creating, it's expressing, know.
It's being and doing simultaneously.
Exactly.
And to be is to do. What are you doing? Being, and like, I love what you were saying there, Elijah, about combining the energies of Jupiter and Venus together. What the words that came through me when you were saying that was perfectly imperfect, because you understand the expansion is never done, yet it's okay to just breathe and just like soak it in and enjoy just the utter raw beauty of being a human being in this meat suit with 5 senses and all these wonderful rich things to experience.
Yeah, and I describe my work as sloppy sacred. It's sacred, but it's fun too.
Right. Yeah. It's messy and raw, and it's a process.
Messy mandalas. Yeah.
Yes, love that.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I like that a lot. Let's see. Any last other things you gentlemen want to hit on this evening?
I think one of the biggest things to really bring this back to is why. Why are we doing this? Why are we having this conversation right now? Why are we all putting forth our work into the universe? And I think that, at least speaking for myself, the answer is, again, twofold. And first, it's for you, the viewer, so that you can see and witness what it's like to live as a creatively expressed being, and the joy that I experience as part of doing this, and the power of mounting that dragon of the self, of the ego, and really riding it through your rituals, through your right action, to your life's purpose, so that you feel satisfied at the end of the day. And the second reason that I'm here is because there's a need for me, for myself, to express myself. So it's sort of this service to, it's another dichotomy that I find really interesting that polarizes a lot of people, is service to self or service to others. And I really buy into the service to truth, which is when you do what benefits you on the highest level, it also benefits others on the highest level. So for me, being here and expressing this, then it feels really good for me. and it's also you get to benefit from it. And I'm
Right.
certain you guys feel the same from your nods.
Well,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
This was kind of a big realization for me not that long ago when I was sort of really exploring the philosophical foundations and framework of morality and just the human condition in general. Is either way you slice it, there's the sort of the satanic mindset and then the cosmic will, and you're serving one or the other,
Yeah.
the ego, the I or the me, and they both have the me. It's just that one is me instead of you, and the other is me because of you or me with you.
Yeah.
So so that pseudo spiritual idea of like you've got to put yourself down and just live in squalor and like anything you want for yourself is just greedy and selfish and all this kind of stuff. It's totally just missing the complete point of to me it's like these emergent states or layers or levels of consciousness rising up. Is that Darwinian mindset has its place. That's why the animals are still there. It works on a certain level of consciousness. It's just that there are higher levels of consciousness, and you begin to realize that, wait a minute, we don't have to eat each other. We can literally cooperate, get everything we want, but also live in harmony as well. That was such like an epiphany for me, really, because yourself is still in the equation either way. And it's funny because people who talk about being so selfless and stuff, they're usually doing that out of some sense of moral obligation.
Yeah.
Well, why would you live in alignment with moral obligation unless you were worried about karma or something to do with your spiritual rewards or some kind of incentive that's good for you? Why would you want to be a good person if, it doesn't benefit you, basically? Like, it's right there, proof in the pudding. So,
yeah,
very interesting.
And with such individuals, often too, my experience has been that they project that shadow out. They don't acknowledge their own self-interest, and they think that they are just in service to others and just laboring. This just happened to me recently, where a guy who I've been working with for a couple of years just sent me some messages and said, "You're in service to self, not service to others, and I'm officially severing all ties with you," and blah, blah, blah. And he sent it to me and a group of other people, and it was just like, I can see from my vantage point what he's projecting out onto the world and onto everyone else around him, and how that's the very thing that's holding him back is his own denial of taking care of himself. Because he doesn't know how to take care of himself.
The lack of food research.
He tries to take care, exactly, yeah. So he tries to take care of everyone else and expect them to take care of him back. And then when they have boundaries, then he gets upset because I gave to you. You should be giving back to me. I'm like, that's not a true gift. That's a manipulation attempt. And you failed at it because I have boundaries.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that I got to witness that and learn that, because it took the concept, the abstract concept that I had, and it made it hyper real for me. It was something that I had studied and learned about. And then I had the opportunity to witness it in reality unfold. I was like, okay, cool. Now I have a story to tell. And alchemize that into some truth and some wisdom.
Well said, man.
I like that.
So I think that's going to wrap up tonight's episode. So I hope everyone enjoyed. And if you did, please hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel. We've got weekly videos coming out of a range of topics, and we'd love to have you as part of the channel. So we're going to end tonight's episode a little bit different than we usually do, with a segment that Elijah put together for us as a meditational piece that features some of his art and some really inspiring, peaceful, beautiful music as well. So I hope you enjoyed this episode and enjoy this unique outro to this episode as well. And until next week, friends, be empowered, be inspired, and be encouraged.